Today I will be presenting and sharing about epidemics and pandemics, as well as a few of the laws that the United States government has put in place to help with the prevention of these infectious outbreaks, as well as the laws on containing these infectious outbreaks. So, with a brief history here, and I mean like actual brief history, we're going to be looking back at Neanderthalic times. With evolution, the whole goal was to pass down our genes to ensure safety of ourselves as well as others. So humans started to form communities within their hunter-gatherer tribes. Because it was a community, they were able to share the work and share the rewards from this. So if one group had an unsuccessful hunt, the successful hunt group would be sharing their food with others. And moving forward from that, humans found themselves in the agricultural turn. The agricultural turn brought even more of a positive impact to communities. With the ability to harvest grains and other goods. They too could sustain life for even longer, share more food among people, and that helped pass down their gene pool as well as it did lead to barter, trade, and economics. So it's very clear and evident that living in a community served a lot of pros. It was very helpful and beneficial to people. But with strength in numbers also came danger in numbers. And that danger in numbers are infectious diseases. So these infectious diseases, when are we going to call them an epidemic and when are we going to call them a pandemic? So it boils down to the size of the affected area. So if it's all contained in a country or bordering countries, it's going to be considered an epidemic. And when it starts to break out into other continents and possibly even globally is when it becomes a pandemic. And on top of that, the infectious disease has to be a communal infectious disease, meaning it is easily spread from person to person by close contact or proximity, such as droplet form from sneezing or coughing, or if it's even airborne. So that's why diseases such as syphilis or hepatitis aren't necessarily epidemics or become pandemics, because they're spread through blood, which is not necessarily a communal infectious type disease. So the first instance we have of an epidemic is the Hittite plague, which was a region around the Middle East, and it had an outbreak in 1750 as well as 1075. This plague, even though it's called a plague, was started by a bacteria called Francisella tularensis, or better known as tulineria. And then we're going to move on to probably the most known about plague. I'm sure everyone in school has been taught about the bubonic plague, and with that teaching might have come the notion that it was caused by rats, or it was caused by the fleas that bit the rats. And while that is true, the main culprit of the bubonic plague was actually a bacteria as well, but this bacteria was called Yersinia pestis, and the death toll from this was massive. Approximately 50 million people had died, and for perspective, that's around 60% of Europe's population at that time. So are plagues the only thing we have to worry about? No. And to clarify, plague is a type of infectious disease. It is not the same thing as an epidemic or pandemic. And there are other causes to epidemics and pandemics. You have influenza, smallpox, cholera, measles, and SARS, and quite a few others. So, what's different about all of those previously listed infectious diseases? Well, they're broken up into two categories usually. They are either bacteria or they are viruses. And so the difference between bacteria and viruses, bacteria are living organisms and the treatments we have for them are antibiotics. You can't use antibiotics on a virus because they are non-living, complicated structures of proteins, nucleic acids, lipids, and carbohydrates, and they have a completely different means of targeting their host cells for replication. We do, however, have viral medications, but these viral medications tend to target the symptoms of the infection rather than fighting the virus itself. And then another thing that we have for viral infections are vaccines, and the vaccines, is, as you might know, as you should know, are taken before an infection ever occurs to help your body build up antibodies in order for if a second infection occurs, your body can quickly respond to it and fight it off. So, how are these bacteria and viruses, how are these diseases prevented? Our body has an amazing, wonderful thing called the immune system, and it's designed with T cells and lymphocytes to help fight off bacteria and viruses that enter into our body. But it's not just our inner workings, our insides that help keep us safe from these infectious diseases. Hygiene is also a very important means to in fighting these infectious diseases. And that kind of might go without second thought, but it wasn't really until the 1940s that the importance of hand washing in medical practices and in life really came together and were truly understood. And as mentioned before, vaccines are another way to prevent the outbreak of infectious diseases. So, those hand washing, hygiene, vaccinations, all that, our immune system, those are all individual efforts. But is there government regulation to safety? Is there authoritative law to keep us all safe? And yes, there is. While you're not going to get arrested or put in jail or fined as an adult for not getting the flu vaccine, some jobs can make mandatory flu vaccination, job requirements for mandatory flu vaccination to work at that establishment. And newborns, with their doctors, they are highly recommending to get all of the vaccinations, specifically the MMR vaccine, the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. And that vaccine, across all 50 states in the United States of America, are required to attend public school. Now, it differs from state to state whether you can get an exemption from getting vaccinations based on religious or political or not political, but philosophical beliefs. And there are some states that allow no exemptions. For example, California and New York do not allow any exemptions from public school necessary vaccinations. So that is one instance of federal and state law that has been put in place to help prevention of outbreak. So there are also other departments that help us along the way. One of them being the Health and Human Services Department. This department is responsible for Law 42 CFR Part 70 and 71 of the communicable diseases and of interstate and foreign scope. So basically, these laws are kind of the cookbook instruction guide on how quarantine and isolation should go. When is it okay to enact quarantine and isolation? And if you know anything about legislature, it takes a long time for bills to pass. And so because of that, we also have executive order. One example when an executive order was put into place to help with the whole epidemic and pandemic routine, like the routine of what we do during it, is Executive Order 13295, which was signed by George Bush. This executive order was in compliance with Section 361B of the Public Health and Service Act. And essentially, what this executive order did was recognize additional and more infectious diseases that deem qualifiable for quarantine and isolation to be put in place. And all of those are listed here, from cholera, plague, smallpox, and SARS. So we have legislature helping us out, and we have the president helping us out with that. Anyone in the executive branch has the ability to help with controlling outbreak and preventing outbreak of infectious diseases in America. And also here we have the CDC, the Center of Disease Control. And what the CDC does is play a huge role in the before part and the after part. They're the ones who are helping set up protocols to prevent outbreaks, and they're the ones who are helping develop treatments and vaccinations for when an outbreak has occurred and when they're trying to bring the numbers of infected people down. They are making medical advancements all the time, working around the clock, and they're just truly doing a great thing for our country here. And I believe that this quote very well sums up what is going on here in America today with COVID-19. Those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So, with everything that's been going on in life, we've heard a lot about social isolation, washing hands, face masks, and basically like herd immunity, staying healthy for ourselves so we can keep others healthy. And it's really been the first time since we have made all of these medical advancements that we have faced a global pandemic like this, which we were not prepared for. So with the CDC, the WHO, and all of these world organizations here to help us, we need to take a good hard look at what has happened to the world and learn what went wrong so we can prevent that from ever happening again. So with that, I will leave you with the Works Cited page.